Rosa Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she pushed her cleaning cart down the long marble hallway. It was Friday evening, and the Riverside Music Academy was finally empty. The students had all gone home, the teachers had left for the weekend, and the building was quiet except for the sound of her cartwheels squeaking against the polished floor. She had been working here for almost 3 years now. Every weekday evening from 6 to midnight, she cleaned the practice rooms, the offices, and the grand concert hall. Rosa knew every corner of this building. She knew which water fountain leaked, which door hinges needed oil, and which windows let in a draft during winter. But what she loved most were the pianos. There were dozens of them throughout the academy. Small upright pianos in the practice rooms, baby grands in the studios, and the magnificent Steinway concert grand that sat center stage in the main hall. Rosa had never touched any of them, of course. That wasn't her place. She was just the cleaning lady. But she loved being near them, dusting their glossy surfaces, carefully wiping down the keys with her special cloth. Sometimes, late at night when everyone was gone, she would stand next to the big Steinway and just look at it. The way the stage lights reflected off its black surface made it look almost magical. She would run her fingers along the smooth wood, being careful not to leave any marks. Then she would sigh, pick up her supplies, and move on to the next room. Rosa was 47 years old now. Her hands were rough from years of cleaning work. Her back ached most days, and she had worry lines around her eyes that made her look older than she was. She lived in a small apartment across town with her sister and her sister's 2 kids. Money was always tight. This cleaning job paid the bills, and she was grateful for it. Tonight was different, though. Tonight there was a big event at the academy. Some kind of fundraising party for rich people who donated money to the school. Rosa had been told to finish cleaning the concert hall early, before the guests arrived. She had mopped the floors until they shined, arranged the chairs perfectly, and made sure every surface was spotless. She was just finishing up, putting away her mop and bucket, when she heard voices and laughter echoing down the hallway. The guests were starting to arrive. Rosa quickly gathered her cleaning supplies, wanting to get out of the way. She knew how these fancy events worked. People in expensive clothes, drinking wine, talking about things she didn't understand. They never even looked at her when she passed by. To them she was invisible, but as she was about to leave through the side door, she heard someone call out, "Hold on a second." "Is that the cleaning woman?" Rosa turned around and saw a large man in a dark suit walking toward her. His face was red and he had a glass of champagne in his hand. He was smiling, but something about his smile made Rosa uncomfortable. Behind him, several other well-dressed people were watching with curious expressions. "Yes, sir. I was just leaving," Rosa said quietly, gripping her cleaning cart. No, don't rush off," the man said, his voice loud and cheerful. He had clearly been drinking. "I was just telling my friends here about how beautiful this piano is. You work here every day, right? You must have seen all the talented kids playing it." Rosa nodded, not sure what he wanted. "Yes, sir. Very talented students." The man laughed and turned to his friends. "See? She's been here for years, probably heard thousands of piano performances." He turned back to Rosa, and his smile grew wider. "Tell me something. Have you ever played it yourself?" Rosa felt her stomach tighten. She shook her head. "No, sir. That's not for me." "Oh, come on," the man said, waving his champagne glass. "You must be curious. All those hours alone with these beautiful instruments. You never even touched the keys?" More people were gathering now, attracted by the conversation. Rosa could see about 20 or 30 guests watching her. Some were smiling, some looked bored, and some had that same amused expression as the red-faced man. She felt her cheeks burning. "I just cleaned, sir. I should go now," but the man wasn't listening. He was talking to his friends now, his voice getting louder. "You know what would be fun? Let's give her a chance to play. Come on, it'll be entertaining. When does the help ever get to perform on a stage like this?" Some people laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. A well-dressed woman with gray hair tried to step forward, saying something about letting Rosa go back to work. But the red-faced man ignored her. No, I insist," he said, walking over to Rosa and gesturing toward the piano. "Come on, just play something, anything. Hot cross buns, chopsticks, whatever you know. We won't judge." Rosa's heart was pounding now. She could feel everyone's eyes on her. Some people had their phones out, probably ready to record this for their friends. She wanted to run, to just push her cart out the door and pretend this wasn't happening. But her legs wouldn't move. Please, sir, I really should go, she managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. The man put his hand on her shoulder, steering her toward the stage. Just one song. Come on, humor us. It'll be fun. Rosa found herself being gently pushed toward the piano. The crowd was growing larger now, maybe 50 people all watching to see what would happen. She could hear whispers and quiet giggles. Someone said something about this being awkward. Another person said it was cruel. But no one stopped it. The gray-haired woman tried again. Richard, really, this isn't appropriate. Let her go. But Richard just laughed. Oh, Helen, relax. I'm just giving her a moment in the spotlight, right? He looked at Rosa. You want to try, don't you? Once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Rosa stood at the edge of the stage, staring at the piano. The beautiful Steinway that she had admired for 3 years. The instrument she had dusted and polished countless times. Always being so careful, always being so respectful. Now she was supposed to play it. Not because anyone actually wanted to hear her play, but because they thought it would be funny to watch her fail. She could just say no. She could turn around and walk away. Let them laugh, let them post their videos online. Let them talk about the cleaning lady who was too scared to play. She had dealt with worse things in her life. But something inside her stirred. A memory from long ago, from another life. From a time when things were different. Her fingers tingled. Her heart, which had been pounding with fear, began to beat with something else. Something she hadn't felt in 20 years. Rosa walked slowly up the stage steps. Her cleaning uniform felt shabby under the bright stage lights. Her worn sneakers squeaked on the polished wood. She sat down on the piano bench, the same bench where talented students and professional musicians sat. Her hands were shaking as she reached toward the keys. The room fell completely silent. Everyone was waiting for the show. Waiting for the joke to reach its punchline. Rosa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. And then she began to play. The first note rang out clear and pure across the concert hall. Then another. And another. Rosa's fingers found the keys like they were greeting old friends. Friends she hadn't seen in decades but could never forget. She started playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The melody floated through the air, soft and gentle at first, like a whisper. Her rough, calloused hands moved across the keyboard with a grace that seemed impossible. Each note was perfect, controlled, intentional. In the audience, the laughter stopped immediately. The smiles froze on people's faces. Richard, the red-faced man who had pulled Rosa on stage, took a step backward, his champagne glass hanging loosely in his hand. His mouth fell open slightly. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Wait, is she actually playing?" Rosa didn't hear them. She was somewhere else now, somewhere far away from this concert hall, far away from her cleaning cart and her worn uniform. Her eyes were closed, and tears were already forming at the corners. Her fingers danced across the keys, pressing and releasing, creating music that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her soul. The room was completely silent except for the piano. People who had been chatting and laughing moments ago now stood frozen, their drinks forgotten in their hands. A few guests who had been sitting down stood up to see better. Someone who had been about to leave the hall stopped at the door, turned around and came back in. Helen, the gray-haired woman who had tried to stop this whole thing, covered her mouth with her hand. She was the director of the academy, and she had been teaching music for over 30 years. She knew talent when she heard it. And this wasn't just talent. This was something else entirely. Rosa's playing grew stronger, more confident. The quiet beginning of the nocturne gave way to the more emotional middle section. Her left hand maintained the gentle rhythm while her right hand sang out the melody. The piano seemed to respond to her touch like it had been waiting for her all along. Every note was crystal clear. Every phrase was shaped with understanding and feeling. A young woman in the audience pulled out her phone and started recording, but not to mock. Her hands were shaking as she held the phone up, trying to capture what she was witnessing. Others did the same. This wasn't funny anymore. This was something people would want to remember. Richard stood there looking confused and uncomfortable. His friends who had been laughing at his joke were now staring at the stage with shocked expressions. One of them leaned over and whispered, "Did you know she could play?" Richard shook his head slowly, unable to speak. The smile was completely gone from his face now, replaced by something that looked like shame mixed with disbelief. On stage, Rosa moved into the climax of the piece. The music swelled and filled every corner of the hall. Her whole body was engaged now, swaying slightly with the rhythm, her shoulders moving, her feet working the pedals with expert precision. She was no longer the invisible cleaning lady. She was a musician, a real musician, and everyone in that room could feel it. Some of the Academy's music professors were in the crowd. They had come to the fundraiser because they were required to attend, but they hadn't expected this. They looked at each other with wide eyes, silently asking the same question. Who is this woman? One professor, an elderly man who had taught piano for 40 years, moved closer to the stage. He watched Rosa's hands carefully, studying her technique. His eyes grew wider with each passing measure. Her finger positions were perfect. Her touch was controlled. Her musicality was mature and sophisticated. This wasn't someone who had taken a few lessons as a child. This was someone who had serious training, real training. The nocturne began to wind down, returning to the gentle, quiet mood of the beginning. Rosa's playing became softer, more delicate. Each note was placed with care, like she was handling something precious and fragile. The final notes hung in the air, and then there was silence, but Rosa didn't stop. Without pausing, without opening her eyes, she moved straight into another piece. This one was different, more dramatic and powerful. It was Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor, a piece famous for its difficulty and emotional intensity. The opening chord struck like thunder. Rosa's hands crashed down on the keys with controlled force, creating a sound that made several people in the audience jump. The music was dark and brooding, filled with tension and drama. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, handling the complex passages with stunning accuracy. Now everyone was recording. Phones were up throughout the audience, capturing every moment. People who had been in other rooms of the building heard the music and came to investigate. The crowd in the concert hall had grown to over 70 people, all packed in to watch this impossible scene. Richard had moved to the back of the room. He couldn't watch anymore. His face was bright red now, but not from alcohol. He was embarrassed, deeply embarrassed. What had he done? He had meant to humiliate this woman, to make her the entertainment for his drunk friends. Instead, she was giving a performance that none of them would ever forget. Helen stood near the front, tears running freely down her face. She had dedicated her life to music, to finding and nurturing talent. And here, right under her nose for 3 years, had been this extraordinary musician, cleaning floors and emptying trash cans. How had she not known? How had no one known? Rosa played through the middle section of the Rachmaninoff, her hands crossing back and forth, managing the intricate patterns without a single mistake. The music built and built, growing more intense with each measure. Her face showed the emotion of the piece, the struggle and the passion. Sweat appeared on her forehead, but her playing never faltered. The audience was completely mesmerized. Some people had tears in their eyes. Others just stared in absolute amazement. A few were shaking their heads in disbelief, unable to process what they were seeing and hearing. This was better than any professional concert most of them had attended. And it was coming from the woman they had all ignored, the woman who had been invisible to them for years. The technical passages in the piece required incredible skill. Rosa's fingers had to move at lightning speed, hitting clusters of notes with perfect accuracy. She handled it all flawlessly. The elderly piano professor was now taking notes on his phone, completely absorbed in analyzing her technique. As Rosa moved into the final section of the prelude, the music became even more powerful. The climax was approaching, the moment when all the tension and drama would explode. Her whole body was engaged in the performance now, leaning into the piano, putting everything she had into every note. The final chords rang out, massive and overwhelming. Rosa held them, letting them resonate through the hall, feeling the vibration through the piano bench. And then, slowly, the sound faded away into silence. Rosa kept her eyes closed for a moment longer, her hands still resting on the keys. The tears that had been forming were now streaming down her face, dripping onto her uniform. She was breathing hard, exhausted, but also feeling something she hadn't felt in 20 years. She felt alive. Then she opened her eyes and looked out at the audience. For a moment, nobody moved. The silence in the concert hall was so complete that Rosa could hear her own breathing. She looked out at the sea of faces staring back at her, and suddenly she felt exposed. The music had protected her, kept her safe in her own world. But now it was over, and she was just Rosa again. The cleaning lady in her faded uniform sitting at a piano she had no right to play. Then someone started clapping. It was the elderly piano professor standing near the front. His applause was slow and deliberate, each clap deliberate and respectful. Then another person joined in. And another. Within seconds, the entire room erupted in applause. People weren't just clapping, they were cheering. Some were shouting. A few people were standing on their chairs to see better. Rosa sat frozen at the piano bench, overwhelmed. She had imagined this moment so many times in her life back when she was young and full of dreams. But that was a lifetime ago. She never thought it would actually happen, and certainly not like this. Helen rushed toward the stage, her high heels clicking rapidly against the floor. She climbed the steps quickly despite her age and hurried over to Rosa. Without saying a word, she helped Rosa stand up from the piano bench. Rosa's legs were shaky and she was grateful for the support. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Helen asked, her voice trembling with emotion. She was still holding Rosa's arm, afraid the woman might collapse. "How is this possible?" Rosa opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. The tears were flowing freely now, years and years of held-back emotion pouring out all at once. Her shoulders shook as she cried, and Helen pulled her into a hug right there on stage in front of everyone. The applause continued. People were whistling and shouting, "Bravo!" A young man in the front row had tears streaming down his face. He had been studying piano at the academy for 5 years, and he had never heard anything so beautiful in his life. Richard was still at the back of the room, but he was no longer hiding. He was clapping too, though his face showed a mixture of emotions. He looked amazed, yes, but also deeply ashamed. His friends around him had stopped laughing entirely. They were clapping, but they also looked uncomfortable, realizing they had been part of something cruel that had accidentally turned into something beautiful. After what felt like forever, the applause began to die down. Helen gently guided Rosa to sit back down on the piano bench and pulled over a chair to sit beside her. The crowd grew quiet again, sensing that something important was about to be shared. "Can you tell us?" Helen asked softly, speaking just to Rosa but loud enough that the nearby audience members could hear. "Where did you learn to play?" Rosa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She looked down at her rough, work-worn hands and then back up at the crowd. She had kept this secret for so long that speaking about it felt like opening an old wound. But maybe it was time. Maybe after all these years it was finally time to tell someone. "I'm from the Philippines," Rosa began, her voice quiet and shaky. "From Manila. A long time ago, before I came to America, I was a student at the conservatory. The Manila Conservatory of Music." Helen's eyes widened. The conservatory was well known in the music world. It was one of the most prestigious music schools in Asia. "I started playing piano when I was 5 years old," Rosa continued, her voice growing a bit stronger. "My grandmother had an old piano in her house. It was broken, missing some keys, out of tune. But I loved it. I would sit there for hours just pressing the keys and listening to the sounds." People in the audience were leaning forward now, hanging on every word. Several had started recording again, but this time they were recording her story, not to mock, but to preserve. "When I was 7, a music teacher heard me playing at my grandmother's house. She told my parents I had talent, real talent. My family was poor, very poor, but this teacher, she offered to give me lessons for free. She said I was special." Rosa smiled slightly at the memory, even through her tears. "I practiced every day, sometimes 6, 7, 8 hours. I loved it so much. It wasn't work to me. It was like breathing. By the time I was 12, I was winning competitions. Small ones at first, then bigger ones. When I was 15, I got accepted to the conservatory on a full scholarship." Helen was shaking her head in amazement. "That's incredible. The conservatory is so competitive. I was going to be a concert pianist," Rosa said, and her voice cracked on those words. "That was my dream. My teachers said I could do it. They said I could play in the best halls in the world. I believed them. I practiced even harder. I learned all the major pieces. Chopin, Rachmaninoff, Liszt, Beethoven. I was preparing for international competitions." She paused, and the pain on her face was clear. This was the hard part of the story. "But then my father got sick. Very sick. Cancer. My mother was already gone. She had died when I was young. It was just me, my father, and my 2 younger brothers. The hospital bills were so expensive. My father couldn't work anymore. Someone had to take care of the family, and someone had to pay for everything." The audience was completely silent now. People could sense where this story was going, and it was breaking their hearts. "I was 17 years old," Rosa said. I had to make a choice. Keep studying music and let my family starve, or quit school and find work. It wasn't really a choice at all, you know? Family comes first. That's what my father taught me. She looked down at her hands again. So I quit. I left the conservatory. I took whatever jobs I could find. I worked in restaurants, in stores, in offices. Anything that paid money. My father lived for 2 more years. I was with him until the end. My brothers finished school. They have good jobs now, good lives. I'm proud of them. But the piano? Helen asked gently. I couldn't touch a piano after I quit, Rosa explained. It hurt too much. Every time I saw one, it reminded me of everything I lost. So I just stopped. I told myself that part of my life was over. I needed to focus on surviving, not on dreaming. When did you come to America? Someone in the audience asked. 10 years ago, Rosa answered. My brothers were grown up by then. They didn't need me anymore. I wanted a fresh start, a new life. I came here with almost nothing. I didn't speak English very well. The only jobs I could get were cleaning jobs. But I worked hard, sent money back home, helped my family when they needed it. And you never played again? Helen asked. Not once in all those years? Rosa shook her head. Not until tonight. 20 years. I walked past pianos all the time, especially here at the academy. I cleaned them, dusted them, polished them. Sometimes I would stand next to them late at night when everyone was gone, and I would just look at them. But I never played. I was too afraid. Afraid of what? Helen asked. Afraid that I forgot how, Rosa said simply. Afraid that if I tried and couldn't do it anymore, it would hurt even more than not trying at all. At least if I never touched the keys, I could still remember what it felt like to be good at something. I could still remember when I was someone other than just a cleaning lady. Richard had been moving slowly through the crowd during Rosa's story. Now he reached the front and climbed up onto the stage. He walked over to where Rosa and Helen were sitting. His face was red and his eyes were wet with tears. I am so sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I am so sorry. I thought I was being funny. I thought it would be entertaining to embarrass you. I was drunk and stupid and cruel. I had no idea. But that's not an excuse. I'm sorry. Rosa looked up at him and saw genuine remorse on his face. She nodded slowly. It's okay, she said quietly. No, it's not okay, Richard insisted. What I did was terrible. But maybe, he paused, struggling to find the right words. Maybe something good came from something bad. Because now everyone knows. Everyone knows how talented you are. Helen stood up suddenly, her mind racing with possibilities. She looked at Rosa with an intensity that made Rosa nervous. Rosa, Helen said firmly, how would you feel about finishing what you started? Rosa looked at Helen with confusion in her eyes. Finishing what I started? I don't understand. Helen knelt down beside Rosa's chair so they were at eye level. You left the conservatory when you were 17. You never got to complete your education, never got your degree, never got to pursue your dream. What if you could do that now? What if you could study again? Rosa let out a sad laugh and shook her head. I'm 47 years old. I can't go back to school. I have to work. I have bills to pay, rent to pay. And besides, I couldn't afford the tuition here even if I wanted to. This academy costs more money than I make in a whole year. What if I told you that you wouldn't have to pay anything? Helen said, her voice growing excited. What if I offered you a full scholarship to study here at Riverside Academy? And what if we also gave you a job, a real job, not cleaning but teaching assistant work, helping in the music library, working with students, something that pays better and lets you be around music all day? Rosa stared at her, unable to process what she was hearing. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, Helen said. She stood up and addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, as the director of this academy, I have the authority to offer full scholarships to exceptional students. And I have never in my 30 years here encountered anyone more deserving than Rosa. The crowd erupted in applause again. People were nodding, agreeing enthusiastically. The elderly piano professor shouted out, I'll teach her myself if she wants. No charge. Richard stepped forward again. And I want to help too. I'll donate $50,000 to the academy right now, tonight, to support Rosa's education and to create a scholarship fund in her name for other talented people who had to give up their dreams because of circumstances beyond their control. Rosa's hands were shaking. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. She was just a cleaning lady. Just someone who scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans. This had to be a dream. I don't know what to say, Rosa whispered, tears flowing again. This is too much. Too generous. Say yes, Helen urged. Please say yes. Talent like yours shouldn't be wasted. It's never too late, Rosa. It's never too late to follow your dreams. Rosa looked around at all the faces watching her. Young students who had been recording on their phones. Wealthy donors who an hour ago hadn't even known she existed. Music professors who were looking at her with respect and admiration, and she thought about her father. About the sacrifice she had made all those years ago. Would he want her to keep sacrificing forever? Or would he want her to finally live for herself? Yes? Rosa said so quietly that Helen almost didn't hear her. Then louder, yes, yes, I'll do it. The crowd went wild. People were cheering, crying, hugging each other. Several people rushed the stage to congratulate Rosa personally. The young woman who had first started recording the performance came up to Rosa and showed her the video on her phone. This already has 10,000 views, she said excitedly. I posted it while you were talking and people are sharing it everywhere. The whole world is going to know your story. And she was right. Over the next few hours as the fundraising party continued around them, Rosa's performance spread across the internet like wildfire. The video showed up on social media platforms, was shared in music groups, appeared on news websites. By midnight, it had been viewed over 1 million times. By morning, over 10 million. The comments poured in from all over the world. People were crying watching the video. Musicians were analyzing her technique and marveling at her skill. Others were sharing their own stories of abandoned dreams and lost opportunities. Rosa's story had touched something deep in people, a universal longing for second chances and recognition. News reporters started calling the academy before the sun came up. They wanted interviews with Rosa, wanted to know more about her story. Morning talk shows were fighting to have her as a guest. Recording companies were asking if she had any interest in making an album. Concert halls were reaching out with offers for performances. Helen had to hire an assistant just to manage all the requests that were coming in. She sat with Rosa the next morning in her office, both of them exhausted but exhilarated, going through messages and offers. There's an invitation here from the Philippine embassy, Helen said, reading from her computer screen. They want to honor you at a special ceremony. And look at this one. The Manila Conservatory, your old school, they want you to come back and perform. They're calling you one of their most distinguished former students. Rosa couldn't stop crying. Happy tears this time. I never finished my degree there. I left in shame, feeling like a failure. Well, they don't see you as a failure, Helen said warmly. Nobody does. You're an inspiration, Rosa. But not everyone was celebrating. In the corner of the office, Rosa's cleaning cart still sat where she had left it the night before. Her uniform was still damp with sweat from the performance, and Rosa felt a strange tug in her heart looking at it. What's wrong? Helen asked, noticing Rosa's expression. I keep thinking about the other cleaning staff, Rosa said slowly. About Luis, who works in the morning shift, and Patricia, who does the bathrooms, and young Tommy, who just started last month. They're still invisible, just like I was yesterday. One miracle happened for me, but what about them? What about all the other people out there who have talents and dreams that nobody sees? Helen was quiet for a moment, then she smiled. You're right. And maybe that's part of your purpose now, Rosa. Maybe your story will make people look at others differently, make them see the humans behind the uniforms, behind the job titles. That afternoon, Rosa went back to her apartment to rest. Her sister nearly tackled her at the door, having seen the videos online. The kids were jumping up and down with excitement. The neighbors had gathered in the hallway wanting to meet the famous piano player who had been living among them all this time. But what touched Rosa most was a message on her phone from her younger brother back in the Philippines. He had sent a voice message and his voice was thick with emotion. Rosa, I saw the video. Everyone here has seen it. I want you to know that Dad would be so proud of you. Yes, you gave up your dream to take care of us, and we will always be grateful for that sacrifice. But you didn't lose your gift. You kept it safe all these years, and now the world gets to see what we always knew, that our sister is extraordinary. Rosa played the message 3 times, crying each time. She thought about her father, about that impossible choice she had made at 17. She had always wondered if she did the right thing. Would her life have been better if she had stayed at the conservatory? Would she have become famous, successful, wealthy? But now she realized something important. The music had never left her. It had been inside her all along, waiting, and maybe that's what made tonight's performance so powerful. It wasn't just technical skill. It was 20 years of life, of struggle, of sacrifice, of pain and love and loss all poured into those notes. She couldn't have played like that at 17. She hadn't lived enough yet. Her phone rang. It was Helen. "Rosa, I know you must be exhausted, but I have to tell you about one more opportunity. There's a concert hall downtown, the Grand Theater. They have an opening next month for a benefit concert. All proceeds would go to music education programs for underprivileged children. They want you to be the featured performer. They're calling it Second Chances, an evening with Rosa Martinez. What do you think?" Rosa looked around her small apartment, at her sister making dinner in the tiny kitchen, at her nephew doing homework at the table, at the simple life she had built through hard work and determination, and she thought about the girl she used to be, the one who dreamed of playing in the greatest concert halls in the world. That girl was still inside her, older now, weathered by life, but still there, still dreaming. "Yes," Rosa said into the phone, and this time she didn't hesitate at all. "Tell them yes. I'll do it." The month leading up to the concert was the most intense period of Rosa's life since her conservatory days. She practiced for hours every day, her fingers slowly remembering skills they hadn't used in 20 years. Helen had arranged for her to use one of the academy's practice rooms whenever she wanted. The elderly piano professor, whose name was Vincent, gave her lessons twice a week, helping her refine her technique and prepare her program. But it wasn't easy. Rosa's hands weren't 17 anymore. They ached after long practice sessions. Her back hurt from sitting at the piano bench for hours. And there were moments, especially late at night when she was alone in the practice room, when doubt crept in. What if she had just been lucky that night at the fundraiser? What if she couldn't do it again? What if she embarrassed herself in front of a whole theater full of people? During one particularly difficult practice session, about 2 weeks before the concert, Rosa broke down crying in frustration. She had been trying to perfect a difficult passage in a Liszt piece, and her fingers kept stumbling over the same notes. She put her head down on the piano keys and just sobbed. Vincent, who had been listening from outside the room, came in quietly. He sat down next to her on the bench, not saying anything at first. "Just being present." "I can't do this," Rosa said through her tears. "I've been away from music too long. I'm not good enough anymore." "Rosa," Vincent said gently, "do you know why I offered to teach you for free? Why I canceled other students to make time for you?" She shook her head, not looking up. "Because in 50 years of teaching piano, I have never heard anyone play with the kind of soul you have. Technique can be taught. Practice can fix the rough spots. But what you have, that ability to make people feel something deep inside when you play, that cannot be taught. That's a gift. And that gift doesn't go away." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "The doubt you're feeling right now? Every great musician feels it. The fear of not being good enough? That means you care. That means it matters to you. So feel the fear, but don't let it stop you. The world needs to hear what you have to say through this music." Rosa wiped her eyes and nodded. She took a deep breath, placed her hands back on the keys, and started the passage again. This time, instead of focusing on perfection, she focused on the feeling. And the notes came easier. The night of the concert arrived faster than Rosa expected. The Grand Theater was completely sold out. Over 2,000 people had bought tickets, and the concert was being live-streamed for people around the world to watch. The proceeds, as promised, would go to music education programs for children who couldn't afford lessons. Backstage, Rosa stood in front of a mirror in a dressing room. She was wearing a beautiful dark blue gown that Helen had helped her pick out. Her hair was styled elegantly. She looked like a different person from the cleaning lady in the faded uniform. But her hands were shaking. There was a knock on the door. "5 minutes, Miss Martinez," someone called. Rosa's heart hammered in her chest. She looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, "You can do this. For Dad. For everyone who never got a second chance. You can do this," Helen peeked her head in. "Ready?" "No," Rosa admitted. "But I'm going anyway." Helen laughed and gave her a quick hug. "That's the spirit. Oh, and Rosa, there are some special guests in the audience tonight. Your brothers flew in from the Philippines. They're sitting in the front row." Rosa's eyes filled with tears immediately. "My brothers are here? They wouldn't miss this for anything," Helen said, smiling. "Now go out there and show them what their sister can do." Rosa walked through the backstage corridors, her gown swishing with each step. She could hear the murmur of the audience beyond the curtain. 2,000 people, millions more watching online, all waiting for her. The woman who had been invisible for so long was about to be seen by more people than she had ever imagined. She stepped onto the stage, and the applause was immediate and deafening. The lights were bright, making it hard to see individual faces, but she could see her brothers in the front row, both of them standing and clapping with tears streaming down their faces. She saw Richard, the man who had started all of this, sitting with his family and applauding respectfully. She saw dozens of her fellow cleaning staff from the academy, all dressed in their best clothes, there to support one of their own. Rosa sat at the grand piano, a beautiful concert instrument that made even the Steinway at the academy seem small. She adjusted the bench, took a deep breath, and began to play. She had chosen her program carefully. She started with the same Chopin nocturne she had played that night at the fundraiser. It was her way of honoring where this journey began. But this time she played it even better. This time she wasn't surprised by her own ability. This time she was in full control, fully present, fully herself. The audience was silent, mesmerized. Even people watching at home on their computers and phones found themselves holding their breath. There was something magical happening, something more than just music. It was a story being told through sound, a story of loss and rediscovery, of dreams deferred but not destroyed. Rosa moved through her program. Rachmaninoff, Liszt, Debussy, and Beethoven. Each piece showcased different aspects of her musicality. The power, the delicacy, the technical brilliance, the emotional depth. She played for 90 minutes straight, pouring everything she had into the performance. But it was her final piece that brought the house down. She had kept it a secret from everyone, even Vincent. It was a traditional Filipino folk song, one her grandmother used to sing to her when she was a little girl. She had arranged it herself for piano, mixing the simple melody with complex harmonies and variations. It was her way of honoring where she came from, of remembering that none of this would have been possible without her family's sacrifices. As the last notes faded, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then the theater exploded. People leaped to their feet, applauding and cheering. Some were openly sobbing. Her brothers were both crying and laughing at the same time. The standing ovation lasted for over 10 minutes. Rosa stood at the piano, bowing again and again, tears flowing freely down her face. But she insisted on one more thing. When the applause finally began to die down, she walked to the front of the stage and took the microphone. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you all so much. But I want to say something important. This concert tonight isn't really about me. It's about all the people who have talents and dreams that the world doesn't see. It's about the person who serves your coffee, the person who drives your bus, the person who cleans your office. They all have stories. They all have gifts. They all deserve to be seen." She paused, looking out at the crowd. "I was lucky. I got a second chance because someone decided to humiliate me, and it backfired in the most beautiful way. But so many others never get that chance. So I want to announce tonight that I'm starting a foundation, the Second Chances Foundation. It will provide music lessons, instruments, and support to adults who had to give up their dreams because of circumstances. Because it's never too late. It's never ever too late." The applause started again, even louder than before. Rosa looked over at her brothers, at Helen, at Vincent, at all the people who had supported her journey. And she felt something she hadn't felt in 20 years. She felt complete. 6 months later, Rosa gave her first performance at Carnegie Hall in New York, one of the most prestigious concert halls in the world. The same girl who had quit music school at 17 to take care of her family was now performing on stages she had only dreamed about. But every week, without fail, she still taught free piano lessons to students in the Second Chances program. Adults in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond who had set aside their dreams to raise families, work jobs they didn't love, survive circumstances that were beyond their control. Rosa knew their stories because she had lived their story, and sometimes late at night Rosa would visit the Riverside Music Academy. She would walk past the concert hall where her life had changed forever. Her old cleaning cart was still there, kept in a glass case now as a reminder. A small plaque beside it read, "Dreams may be delayed, but they are never destroyed." Rosa would stand there looking at it, remembering the woman she used to be. The invisible woman who dusted pianos and mopped floors. The woman who thought her story was over. She would smile, touch the glass gently and whisper, Thank you. Because that woman, the one who sacrificed everything for her family, the one who kept going even when it hurt, the one who never completely let go of who she was inside, that woman had made this possible. That woman was a survivor. That woman was strong. That woman deserved every bit of joy that came after. And then Rosa would walk to the piano, sit down and play. Not for an audience this time. Just for herself. Just for the pure love of music. Just because she could. Because some dreams don't die. They just wait. And when the time is finally right, they bloom more beautifully than anyone could have imagined.